I haven't showcased anything in a while, so I got a lot of things to go through. I've been busy this past few months. So I'm going to start with Escape the Void, which is an extraction shooter game, kind of like in the same line as Zero Silveira, but more with focus on online multiplayer and playing with your friends and on a fantasy setting as opposed to the post-apocalyptic setting. Zero Silveira, Escape the Void, it has the same system Zero Silveira has about on the fog of war you can see where enemies are. And it took me a while to actually get it looking right on Godot, so I'll start here. Essentially, if I have a light 2D on the scene, and I change the shader global to 1, so now wherever this light is, it's going to be casting shadows. So if I move this around, you can see how the shadows update the positions. And this shader that is on these things, it's actually unshaded. I had to expose some functions inside the engine to allow me to sample different places on both the light texture and for the shadows. So for the enemies, on Verse Shader, instead of like displaying the shadows, I use that information to change the opacity of the enemy. So if an enemy is, let me get an enemy into this scene. This is the golem. So if an enemy, he went inside the light and now he's rotated. So if the enemy is in the light, he'll be showing up fine. But the moment that he gets outside the light, he's now invisible. So when you're playing, you actually have to be looking around and trying to make sure you're not being surprised. I can show you how this works on the game itself. Let me hide this light. And since this is a shader, I can use that shader global to turn it on and off. So in the hub, whenever you first spawn, like everything's lit up, everything's fine. So I can easily change that. Yeah, this is Godot.
Very popular.
I also got the whole inventory system. Here there's some initial things you can get, which for some reason apparently I cannot get, but that's fine. I can talk to this guy to actually go to the world. And in the world you can see how that works. So like as I'm going around, I can't really see where the enemies are. I think I actually disabled the enemies when I was testing out some other stuff, so I'm gonna just spawn, let's spawn a slime.
Oh, yeah, so.
And now it saw me.
He's a fat slime.
Yeah, no, the game actually is pretty hard, and like, Zero Silveira is also a very hard and punishing game. Like there's also, you need to make sure you have food and water, like whenever you reach certain levels of how much food you have or don't have, you start taking damage, you have less health, you have less stamina. Actually, I can run, I forgot I can run. There's stamina, and I can run and it spends my stamina. But yeah, so this system was something that was pretty interesting. Another thing that's pretty cool is the resource system. I changed the tile map system a little bit so it would allow me to... So for instance, let's say I have blueberry bushes, which I do have on this game. Let me select this part of the tile map. On the blueberry bushes tile, I can set how many blueberry bushes can be in a map. So over here, blueberry bushes. On the custom data, I can say I want between 3 and 6 blueberry bushes in the map, and above 3 there will be a 30% chance of a blueberry bush appearing, up to a maximum of 6. And then down here I can say like, oh, it will give you 2 to 5 blueberries. Custom data here can say like, oh, the item that I'm going to be giving is blueberry. So I have like blueberry, red berry apparently, iron ore, wood. So there's different resources, and these are in the tile map itself. And when you're close to it, I'm constantly checking if you're changing tile map position, so I'm finding the tile maps that are close to you. If they have the custom data that tells it it's a resource, then I let you interact with it. And also, so if you interact with a blueberry, I say like, oh, change to this other tile, so it changes to the empty blueberry. So all of these, I don't need to create different scenes or prefabs or whatever. It's all done in the tile set itself. For things that do need scenes, so the extraction altar has a lot of different codes that is involved with it. This is where you go to teleport back into your into your hub. So for this, I can still place it and take advantage of the same system that allows me to only have a certain amount of these. So I place wherever I want. And instead of saying what I want to harvest, I put the file name. And when it has file name, it knows that it needs to actually delete all of those and spawn scenes on those positions for whatever it wants. So that makes the map making way easier with the tile map system. I think on the extraction shooter, that's mostly it that I have that's quite interesting. The state machine system is kind of interesting as well. I have a little example of this that's better on another project, which is not open right now. So I'm just gonna jump to another thing. But essentially I made a little, I've been extending my Godot both on the actual Godot engine side when I have to, but I've been making a bunch of different custom modules, which they are available open source. You can go on GitHub and look for Yarn Voxel, which is my voxel system, Yarn Engine, which is like my collection of different goodies and things that are useful. And the state machine is one of those things. It's essentially a easy to use state machine that I've been using on these enemies, which, for instance, wonder states. There's a pass condition, a fail condition, and whenever I'm creating a new state, I can override some of those functions, kind of like the reg or the start in Unity or the reg in Godot, which return a boolean, and if I want to exit the stage to the pass condition, I'll return true and it'll automatically go into the next stage. If I want for the fail stage, on that condition will return true, I'll go to the other one. So I can kind of compose my state machine a lot through the inspector, as opposed to having to do a whole bunch of code to tell where to transition when. And I also have one more node that's the state override, and that one kind of like is looking for this condition all the time. And if this happens, it will override whatever other state's playing, and it's going to transition to this other state. So with all of those elements, I can create some cool AI for the game. That's about it for Skip the Void. I'm gonna go into, I'm always jumping around in different projects for those that are new here and don't know me. So this is kind of like a spiritual successor to Garden Paws, which is my biggest game under Bitten Games. Garden Paws released in 2018, so it's kind of old by now. And we're starting to work on a new one. I made a voxel system in Unity originally, and now I have transitioned it into Godot, and I'm making it better. This terrain over here has been made from my voxel system, and now I can actually edit it in the editor itself. So I can come over here, and I can dig, I can paint. I think it's not super happy with how many different tabs I have open. Yeah. It's not usually this slow.
Might want to close a few then.
Yeah, eventually. I can also paint different types of materials on these, so I can go sand and paint sand or paint stone. I've also been working on asset placer, which lets me more easily place assets in the world, but that one's still pretty new. I have this little window here. I can place some scenes here. It should display the image of the item, but essentially I can just mouse over and click, and I'm gonna add a bunch of like little sliders, like, oh, I wanna scatter these on the terrain within this radius, which will help me add things to the terrain a little easier. On the voxel editor front, I'm gonna close this and I'm gonna open my other test projects, which which I thought I had opened all the projects I needed, but apparently not. I also changed the icon of Godot just to, because sometimes I was opening the wrong Godot and I was getting confused. So now I know that I'm opening the right one because like the icon is different. Like,
oh yeah, version differences.
yeah, like this is my custom version of Godot. I've been like modifying the source code and like creating custom modules. So whenever I do that, I have to recompile the engine. So it's like a custom version. So yeah, let me create a new 3D scene. And I'm gonna add an island generator. So this goes in tandem with my voxel editor. It's a little island generator that generates islands for using my voxel system. So the island generator is a resource, so I can reuse them. I can save like, oh, this type of island, this resource, and like, originally when I was making this voxel system, I was thinking of making a game where you're visiting several islands in a open world. So that's kind of like where I was going with this. But essentially, here I can add a bunch of different generator effects, and it kind of combines them to create my island. So right now it just has a noise, essentially, and I can modify this noise here. It's like, oh, a cellular. So now it's giving me this. This is kind of like a little example of how things are gonna look. I can click here to generate, and it just generated this for me. There are some other things I can change here, so like where the water level is. I can change the multipliers for the height. So if I say 50 height multiplier, let's change this a little bit and generate again. What did I do? I'll go back to 0, 0, 1. And I'm actually gonna go back to 20 on height multiplier because it doesn't seem like it liked that very much. Okay. So yeah, if I add different noises here, let me generate this. Right now it doesn't look very much like an island, but I can add, for instance, a fall-off map. So I have different types of fall-off. This is the squared type. It kind of gives me more of a square fall-off on the sides, which is not ideal all the time, but sometimes it can be interesting. I'm gonna turn on auto-generate, so it generates as I'm changing things. I can also change the influence of each of the layers. So if I change the influence here, the auto-generate, you can see how that goes. I'm gonna change the minimum water level a little bit. Yeah, so now there's like some sand and some rocks. The caves that it's generating, it uses this different noise over here. This is a little preview of how the noise cave for the caves is working. And this is 3D noise. So if the color is black on whatever 3D space it is, it's gonna generate a cave. And I have a little settings, some settings here that I can modify this noise a little bit, so the lacunarity of the noise, the smoothness of the cave. Yeah. So yeah, this system is pretty cool. I can create lots of different things really easy by just modifying things. I can add a curve to further shape the islands. So right now it's just a curve that's like all on 0, but I can come here and like, so like, oh, if the value of the island is 0.25, I want it to be 1 instead. And it can kind of shape things like this. I can also change how much this actually influences things. I have a mask thing as well that I can say like, oh, only apply this if it is within this mask. And I can change over here the mask frequency, and essentially it should give me here a preview of the mask. But a lot of these tools are still kind of work in progress and not working as well as they should be.
It's a beta.
Yeah. I can also change the terrain in runtime, which I shouldn't have closed guard and pause to show, because that's where I have it set up already. I'll just come here and say run, so it doesn't have to actually open the whole editor, just run the game. Let me enable voxel destruction. So yeah, I can come over here and click and it does not want to destroy anything.
Okay.
Yeah. So I guess that is not working right now. But that is something that was working at 1.2. Apparently, oh, I see.
Oh, there you go. Oh.
Yeah, I don't know why it didn't want to work over there, but yeah, I can destroy it over here. These cracks are also something that the shader is applying. So essentially I'm changing the vertex colors of the things for the different like grass and sand and whatever. And for the health of the voxel points, I also change one of the vertex colors, and the shader applies these cracks to like visually see like, oh, this area is now starting to get destroyed. Ideally, we are gonna have like different items that drop down, kind of like Minecraft, and we'll be able to collect sand and like place sand and modify your terrain as well, which should be fun. I did also some different modules where like the Y-Save module, which helps me save and load things using kind of like player prefs in Unity, but with you can nest things in this dictionary. So I can say I want to save the player/inventory/currency. And it's essentially creating those dictionaries for me and nesting them. So if I open the JSON of the save, I'll see all of that hierarchy over there. I have a Y time because Godot, the way it does time is in milliseconds. And I'm very used to the float way that Unity does time. So I would like to have that, and I just created my little time tracker, and I ended up adding more and more stuff to it. So now it tracks a pause-independent game time that respects the pause, and it also tracks an in-game clock for games like Garden Pause that you have like a day and night cycle and everything. So I can have a bunch of different methods there. I can query the game day, game year, game month, and all sorts of things. I made a little menu system that's a menu stack that I can easily spawn new menus. It handles all of the fade in, fade out. So like if I exit a menu and there's another one on the stack, it automatically goes back to the previous menu. And if you use Godot and you're interested in any of that, this is all in my Yarn Engine module that's on my GitHub. UI physics, because Godot, when you're doing raycasts, you actually need to say like get viewport, get world, and create a new query every time, while in Unity you just say raycast from here to here, which is way easier to create my new Y physics that I can do the same thing, like recast 3D from here to here, this is the collision mask, just give me the results. UINet, I created a Socket.io based Node.js server to handle multiplayer without having to worry about the net punch through and all that sort of stuff. That's also a GitHub free open source available module that I created. It also supports host migration, which doesn't seem to be very easy to do with Godot. I also changed the sprite frames system for the other game because I think the main way of doing animation in Godot seems to be the animation player. The sprite frames is way easier to set up, but it's way simpler. But I also like the simplicity of it, but I needed some callbacks on certain frames. So like whenever the golem's attacking, for instance, I need to know exactly the frame that he hits the ground. So I created a little system on sprite frames that lets me set these kinds of callbacks that I can call in the code. So there's a new signal that I can just call to, and it will give me, I should have kept the other project open, but it will give me that callback and I can react to it. Last thing that I did, yeah, I'm way past my time. Last cool thing I did is the Keep the Heroes Out game, which is a digital board game essentially. It's a real board game that this local game designer Luis created, and if you've been to HalCon, like he always has a booth there with Vesuvius Media and his games, Bura Games. It's a really fun game, and we are collaborating now to create a digital version of this board game. I started it in Unity last year, but now I'm porting it over to Godot. And we're also creating a VR experience that we're going to be taking to some, he does a lot of showcases. He goes to big event in Indianapolis, which I think is Gen Con. He goes to one in Germany, that's the Essen Spiel. And we're going to be showcasing the VR event, the VR experience, and the digital game on these events. So I've been working on that. And on VR with Godot, I had some problems with the lights because all of these little rooms have lots of little lights, and that can be very heavy for using on the Quest because it's a mobile VR platform. So what I did is that right now the scene actually is completely unlit. So all of those lights are done straight on the shader. And I made a little system to help me set up these lights. So I just turned on the directional lights in the scene. This room doesn't have the shader that has all those custom lights. I'm gonna add an Omni lights to it. Okay, so now I got a little light in this room. Gonna tweak the energy a little bit. Gonna give it a color. Can mess with the range and attenuation. So essentially I can have up to 4 lights per room. I'm gonna just change the colors a little bit so you can kind of see it better once I convert. But essentially I made a little converter between the real lights of Godot and my fake light system. So if I create calculate, light to fake light, now I copy from, because I have 2 different materials, so I copy from one to the other. And if I change the shader now into my actual shader for this scene, let me change this to my prop shader. Let me turn off these lights. Now I have in the shader the information from these lights, and I can actually tweak them over here. Which doesn't seem like it wants to do, but oh, there we go. Yeah, so I can change each of these values now for color, like for power. Okay. You can change the color of the light itself too. And let me copy this to the other one. Okay. So yeah, eventually by tweaking these values, you can get to those nice results that I have over here, where apparently my initial lights weren't set up very well. That's mostly it. That's what I've been up to in the past few months. Yeah.
Nice.
Does anyone have any questions about anything from any of those things?
Are you firmly a Godot believer now?
Oh yeah. It's just so much better in so many ways, like so much lighter. Like Unity, I couldn't even have this many projects open without like my computer trying to like become a Formula One car or something.
Plus it's open source, you can hack the actual engine itself.
That's what I've been doing. Like so much of this, like
when with Unity, you're pretty much boxed in and stuck with all the quirks and
exactly.
issues and performance problems and just.
I keep finding some bugs here and there, like instead of like waiting forever, I just fix the bug, or if there's a PR, I just pull it in and put it into my custom engine. Yeah, like this is the fork I made of Godot, and like you can see like the sprite frames thing that I added, the changes to allow for the custom light sampling. Like a lot of the things that I'm doing in these projects, I couldn't do the same way in Unity. Like Unity literally just doesn't support it. For instance, for the Garden Paws game, I really wanted in Unity back on the original Garden Paws to be able to put the little icons for the items on the Quest UI. So if I need to get free wood, I would like to just show free and the little icon for wood. In Unity, I could do that with the either just having all of those sprites in memory all the time and literally putting the sprites there. But ideally, I would like to just use the rich text labels to just put the icon there. And I literally couldn't do it in Unity because I would have to generate in runtime the text mesh emoji, whatever. But for a game that has over 2,000 items, that's not very feasible. In Godot, you can on BB code just say image, puts the path to the image, and it just puts the image there. So much easier. There's just like a lot of these little things in Godot here and there that just make life so much easier. Yeah, this quest, for instance. So if I talk to him, which this as well is a pretty cool system that it's pulling the quests from. I like keeping my game data on spreadsheets. And this is the Garden Paws quest spreadsheet. I can press a button in Godot, it will download the spreadsheet, and it will populate everything that I need, including creating the dialogue resources that the dialogue system uses. And yeah, right here, I got my little icons there for wood, for stone. So, yeah. On Skip the Void 2 with this system, I can actually set up the weapons and stuff by just setting these little JSON files on extra info, and whenever the weapon is used, it takes all that information and sets it up, which is pretty damn cool. Makes my life so much easier. Yeah. So yeah, that was the.
Is it safe for me to update my version of Yarn Cat to the latest commit?
You would have to redo the changes, because like I didn't redo the changes I did for you, like on the shadow system. My shadow sampling thing is only on 2D right now. It doesn't have any 3D shadow sampling.
Okay.
But you could get the same changes and like redo them on top of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you say there's going to be like a sequel to Garden Paws? Is that the idea?
We're playing around with it. We don't know if it's going to be Garden Paws itself or it's going to be something else.
Okay.
But it's going to be at least a spiritual successor.
So would that be a Yarn Cat game or a Bitten
No,
Toast game?
that's with Bitten Toast.
That is a Bitten Toast.
Christina's working on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Any more questions? No. Sounds like we're good. So we're gonna head downstairs to see some cool stuff that Sadag's working on.
Do we need to come back up again?
It's 3:40, so I'm assuming.
I'll start winding things down.
Socialize now.